So I finally got around to watching The Batman along with Riley, who's also a content creator. She's my fiance. Check out her channel. And I'm a huge Batman fan, by the way. I've been one ever since I was a kid. My granny would have me watching reruns of Adam West Batman. I also enjoyed the Batman animated series, the Tim Burton Batman films, as well as Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. So, yes, I am a huge Batman fan. And coming into the Batman movie, even though I've been hearing good things about it from some friends, some viewers, and subscribers over on the gaming channel, I kind of kept my expectations low for the Batman, mainly because I'm such a huge fan of the Dark Knight trilogy. Well, 2 out of 3. Batman Begins and The Dark Knight are 2 of my favorite live-action Batman movies of all time. So I didn't know how the Batman was going to rank up with those 2 movies. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give you a non-spoiler review, and then we'll just dive into spoilers just like I've been doing with previous reviews over on my GB Fang channel, which is basically my Viva Variety channel, non-gaming related, from movie, TV show reviews, political opinions, etc. Anything non-gaming I put over here. So let me know below in the comment section if you've watched The Batman, your thoughts, your views, your opinions about it, and try to keep it spoiler-free for anyone else that might just venture across the video out of consideration. The Batman is directed by Matt Reeves. He also wrote it along with his writing partner, and he's directed some movies that I've enjoyed, like Cloverfield, even though I remember my dad not really caring for the way that the camera worked in Cloverfield. He hated that. But overall, that was a decent movie. Then he is also best known for directing 2 of the newer Planet of the Apes movies, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes as well as War of the Planet of the Apes. And I thought both movies were decent. I think I like Dawn way better than War, but that's just my personal opinion. It is roughly 3 hours long, so The Batman is a long movie. Starring Robert Pattinson, Zoe Kravitz, Jeffrey Wright, Paul Dano, Colin Farrell, and Andy Serkis. Robert Pattinson obviously plays Batman Bruce Wayne. Zoe Kravitz plays Selina Kyle, a.k.a. Catwoman. Jeffrey Wright plays Lieutenant Gordon. And Paul Dano plays the Riddler. Colin Farrell plays the Penguin. And Andy Serkis plays Alfred Pennyworth, which is an interesting role for him because he's best known for CGI, more villainous characters. Well, I mean, not in the Planet of the Apes movies, because he played Caesar in those 3 movies. He did a great job as Caesar, and he's awesome as Gollum in Lord of the Rings trilogy. Andy Serkis is a very good actor, and he's also a good director in his own right. And I thought he was a decent Alfred. We'll talk more about that in a minute. The budget for the Batman was around $200 million, and the score was by Michael Giacchio. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. If I'm not, I do sincerely apologize. But he's done scores for a lot of video games in the past, and recently movies in the MCU, including all the recent Spider-Man movies, like most recently No Way Home, and a few other awesome movie scores as well. So he is a really good composer, and I do love composers like from John Williams to Hans Zimmer and see Danny Elfman. So Michael Giacchio is really good, and I do love his rendition of the Batman theme in the movie. It's up there definitely with Danny Elfman's theme as well as Hans Zimmer's theme. And even the Arkham Batman theme is really good as well, especially in Arkham City. Obviously, I'm playing Arkham Knight in the background for B-roll, FYI, in case you were wondering. And as a fan of the animated series, I'm also a fan of that Batman theme as well. Non-spoilers for the Batman is obviously a long movie, but it is an amazing Batman film. The story, the settings, the cinematography, the performances, the score, fan-freaking-tastic. I put it in my top 3 when it comes to Batman movies. It's in 3rd place. I put it right behind Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, so it gets 3rd place. And that's pretty good coming from a Batman fan. So right under that, in case you're wondering, I have Tim Burton's Batman in 4th place. And then in 5th place, I put Batman Returns. So that's my top 5 when it comes to Batman films. Not a bad spot to be for a brand new movie like The Batman. I think that it's a really good movie. It's not perfect. We'll go over some spoilers in just a moment. But I just want to say that as Batman, I thought Robert Pattinson did a great job. As Bruce Wayne, he could use some work. Zoe Kravitz was amazing as Selina Kyle. I loved almost every moment she had in the movie except for one scene. It was kind of cringe in my opinion. Jeffrey Wright did a great job as Gordon. Paul Dano was Definitely a different Riddler than what you would expect from the comics and the animated series, but I thought that his Riddler worked rather well in this movie. Way better than Jim Carrey's Riddler from Batman Forever. Colin Farrell was surprisingly impressive as the Penguin, and hard to believe that that actually is Colin Farrell underneath all that makeup. But he did an exceptional job as the Penguin. And Andy Serkis as Alfred, as I was going to talk about a moment ago, I like the idea of him playing different roles that he's not used to being or you're used to seeing him as, like Gollum or Caesar or some other villains. I think he's a villain in the MCU, but he's also played as Snoke in the two of the sequel trilogies. So seeing him as somebody on the side of the good guys, like Alfred Pennyworth, which is basically Bruce's, you could say, his surrogate father after his dad and mom got game ended in Crime Alley. It was cool to see Andy Serkis in a different role than you're used to. I think my only issue is I wish we would have had more time with Alfred and Bruce, because I felt like we didn't get enough of Andy Serkis' performance as Alfred, and maybe we'll get more of him being Alfred in a sequel and future installments of this new franchise. If you're a Batman fan like me, or you're just like a comic book fan, or you want something a bit more grounded than previous Batman movies like Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, yet go a little bit over the top. If you want something that feels more dark and gritty and real and has more of a like the Batman World's Greatest Detective vibe to it, because he does do a lot of fighting, but he also does a lot of that detective stuff that Batman is also known for, and going in disguise, not always being Batman at all times. It really does feel like Matt Reeves was trying to go for as realistic of a Batman as possible, even more realistic than Christopher Nolan's Batman in the Dark Knight trilogy. So if you are a Batman fan like me, you definitely need to check out The Batman. It is worth the 3 hours, and even though there are parts that could be cut down, whittled away, it doesn't have to be 3 hours long, but I did enjoy almost every moment of the Batman movie. So I definitely am going to put it up there in the top 3, like I mentioned, right behind Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. Absolutely looking forward to future movies in this franchise. Even if Matt Reeves doesn't end up directing future installments, I hope that he's involved heavily in the executive producing, as well as the writing, the crafting, the plot going forward, because I want this franchise to remain this way, to have this identity that they've established. I don't want it to go crazy and shift from this to more like Batman Forever, or dare I say Batman and Robin. And hopefully the executives at Warner Brothers will stay out of the creative process of these Batman movies going forward, because they have a habit in the past, like Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, of going in and meddling with too many cooks in the kitchen. Hopefully they won't repeat past mistakes, especially since the Batman is doing quite well at the box office. So those are my non-spoiler thoughts and reviews regarding the Batman. With all that out of the way, it's time now to head off into spoilers. So if you haven't watched the Batman and you do not want to be spoiled, I suggest you hit the pause button, go watch the Batman, and then come back later to watch the rest of this video. If you've already watched the Batman and or you don't really care for spoilers, then feel free to stick around. Final warning, we are heading into spoilers. The Batman is set 2 years into Bruce being the Batman, so there is no backstory about Bruce and his mom and dad being gunned down in Crime Alley, and him going off on some sort of journey for vengeance and justice and training to become the Batman. He's already the Batman 2 years in. It's basically Batman year 2. There's no need for us to go over the backstory, because most comic book fans, in fact, I would dare say most movie fans, are fully aware of Bruce Wayne's origins at this point. I do give Matt Reeves props for going into this movie not holding the viewers and the fans' hands, understanding that a lot of people that are going to watch this movie are already Batman fans and already familiar with Batman's origins and backstory. The movie begins with the Riddler stalking and killing his first victim, which is the current mayor. He's in the middle of an election against an opponent, and he's not doing so well in the polls, and he's guilty of corruption, along with a few other quote-unquote victims of the Riddler throughout the movie. And the Riddler obviously leaves a lot of clues, a lot of riddles, ciphers in the mayor's office in his mansion while his wife and child are out trick-or-treating. And there's also a letter that he leaves for the Batman, which is why Lieutenant Gordon brings in the Batman to help with the investigation. But, obviously the current commissioner, I think his name is Commissioner Savage, isn't exactly happy about the Batman being there. And you can see a few of the other cops aren't happy to see a vigilante at the crime scene either. The bat signal's already been established. It exists in this building that's, I guess, was under construction, but not finished yet or will never be finished. This is where Gordon and Batman meet, not the top of the GCPD, but at this abandoned construction site where the bat signal is. And this is where if Gordon needs Batman or if there's something happening in the city that requires Batman's attention, then Gordon will go turn the bat signal on. And I love how at the beginning of this movie, and you've probably seen it in the trailers, where Batman says that the bat signal is not just a sign, it is a warning. And anytime the criminals see that sign appear in the skies over Gotham, they have feelings of dread. And they do show a few criminals in action. One guy robbing a convenience store on Halloween. By the way, this is all taking place on Halloween. It's raining, but people are still out celebrating Halloween. Hey, it's Halloween. And this one dude looks up in the sky, and even though he's wearing a mask, you get a feeling of dread from this guy who just robbed this convenience store that Batman could be nearby, lurking in the shadows, waiting to pounce. Then there's another group of vandals vandalizing a building. I think it's a government building, or maybe it's like a museum or an art gallery. And they look up into the sky and they see the bat signal, and then they run off, right? Because they're afraid that Batman might be somewhere in the shadows lurking as well. So he makes the point at the beginning of the movie that he knows he can't be everywhere. Batman cannot be everywhere at all times. He can't save everybody. He can't stop all crime that's occurring throughout Gotham because there's so much corruption and so much crime going on. But the signal itself installs enough fear within the criminal element that they don't know where Batman could be. He could be in the shadows 5 feet away, or he could be completely across town dealing with another issue, but it's that fear that is having a psychological effect on the criminal element throughout Gotham. So maybe, just maybe, even though he doesn't feel like he's having a positive effect over 2 years of being the Batman, maybe some people have decided not to go out to be criminals out of fear of running into the Batman in the middle of the night. And then there's another group of, I guess they're called, I don't know what they're called, but they look like they're dressed up like Joker, right? They have the clown makeup on. So they're not wearing purple suits, but they have the clown makeup. And there's one of them that only has half their face painted, so I guess they're kind of like an initiate. And they follow this one dude off the subway, and I guess the initiate has to beat up this victim, this innocent citizen that they've captured. But then, of course, Batman stumbles in out of the darkness, and he just beats the crap out of all the Jokers. I don't know what the gang's called. I'm just going to call them the Jokers. So not only is Batman instilling fear within the criminal element, maybe his actions are also causing people to reconsider their lives, like that one Joker initiate. Maybe he saw all of his new buddies get the crap beat out of him by Batman, and he just thought about, you know what, I don't want my ass beat by Batman, and I know that if I continue down this path, eventually I may run into Batman in the future, and I really don't like that idea too much. So maybe it'll set him back on the straight and narrow path away from crime. What I also found interesting after the fight was over and the initiate ran off is that even the citizen that Batman rescued was scared to death of Batman. So Batman's fear is not only having an effect on the criminal element, it's also having an effect on innocent citizens throughout Gotham as well, because they have no idea what this vigilante's up to. They've heard about rumors of the Batman here and there over the past 2 years. A lot of them probably think that Batman is just out in the dark of the night beating the crap out of whoever he wants, and he doesn't have a focus, he doesn't have a goal or an objective, he's just going after everybody. But the truth is, obviously, Batman is trying to protect the citizens of Gotham. But this one victim doesn't know that, so obviously he's completely terrified by this guy in a dark suit, wearing a cape, looking like a bat, who just beat the crap out of all these gang members. And despite the fact that Batman's been at this for 2 years, you can see that the doubt that Bruce has in himself, because he wonders if he's actually making a difference, because these nights just go by each and every night, and he has these contact lenses that are also cameras that record everything, so he always saves what's happening each night, and then he writes down his own journal of what happened this night and that night in order to go back to and and review what's happened in previous nights over the past 2 years, because he's just constantly doing this night after night. So they kind of blend in together. And after he meets up with Gordon at the crime scene of the mansion where the mayor is, after he's been murdered by the Riddler, he obviously goes back to the Batcave underneath Wayne Tower. So I guess instead of Wayne Manor, Bruce and Alfred, and you also have another character as well. I guess she's an older maid or something. So it's not just Alfred. There's another person that helps out as well around Wayne Tower. Underneath Wayne Tower is the Batcave, and you have Alfred come down while Bruce is, looking over the crime scene, the riddles, moving things around. And Alfred's talking about how Bruce is having financial issues, and the accountants from Wayne Enterprise are coming in the morning, and Bruce has to meet with him. And of course, Bruce doesn't want to do that. He wants to be left alone. He doesn't care if he's losing all of his money. He just wants to be the Batman. He wants to try to save Gotham and stop the criminal corruption elements. So you have that issue between him and Alfred. But Alfred also has a mysterious background as well. And he starts helping Bruce with ciphering Riddler's puzzle. And he helps throughout the movie. And of course, the Riddler continues his killing spree of hunting down several powerful people within Gotham's government, including Commissioner Savage, as well as the DA, and he continues leaving letters and riddles for Batman. And the DA doesn't get killed. He actually gets a bomb strapped around his neck. And at the funeral for the mayor, the DA shows up, tied up to an SUV and crashes into the church. And of course, Batman has to try and help the DA answer some riddles, because the Riddler basically is trying to bring a rat from the Maroni crime family out into the light to be exposed, because somebody within the organization not only helped get the crime boss Maroni arrested, but ended up getting all these other people involved, like the mayor, as well as the district attorney, Commissioner Savage, and a few others that are part of this conspiracy. And the DA basically takes the secret to the grave as he gets his head blown off. And Batman nearly gets killed in the process, because Batman decides to stand a little too close to the DA as the ticking clock goes down to zero. You think that eventually Batman would have moved out of the way or ducked behind a pier or something, but no, he just stood there and basically took the blast and somehow survived. I guess he just has the best armor ever that allowed him to survive that blast. It did knock him unconscious, and he got taken into custody by the GCPD. And basically, Batman wakes up at the GCPD in one of the interrogation rooms, laying on the table, surrounded by the cops, including Gordon and the chief of police. The chief of police is still alive, but Commissioner Savage is now dead. So Batman wakes up surrounded by cops, even though he still has his masks on. You think that the cops would have unmasked Batman, or maybe they did, and maybe Bruce has precautions that prevent people from taking his mask off. And obviously the majority of the police in the cage are not exactly happy with Batman. They're blaming him for a lot of the problems happening throughout the city. They're comparing him to the Riddler. They're saying that he's no better than the Riddler, and they want information from the Batman. And Gordon's trying to get Batman to cooperate. So there's this tense situation between all the cops and Batman. And then the cops leave the room in order to have Gordon talk to Batman. But one of the cops that shows up, I think a detective, actually is one of the corrupt cops that is part of the conspiracy. And he's working within the criminal element, like with Penguin. Penguin's involved to some degree, but you have somebody else that we'll talk about in just a minute. So Maroni's in jail, and someone else is in charge now. Whether it's the Penguin or somebody else, yeah, it's... okay, fine. It's Carmine Falcone. Okay, Carmine Falcone, which was one of the right-hand men, betrays Maroni, and he has him arrested. He has him framed. Well, not really framed, because he was the crime boss, but Carmine Falcone has taken over the criminal element. And he's living below the Iceberg Lounge in 44 Below. And above him, you obviously have the Penguin, who's now his right-hand man. So you have the Penguin, and then you have Falcone, and then you have all these henchmen. But you also had, because of all this money that was done through the renewal fund by Bruce's father, Thomas Wayne, they've gotten their hands on it after Bruce's parents' death. and they've used it to make themselves wealthy. The renewal money was supposed to go towards renewing Gotham and building up, parts of Gotham and helping out the orphans of Gotham. Once Batman realizes that one of the cops that are outside the cage is one of the same cops that he fought earlier inside the Iceberg Lounge. Obviously, he's working for Penguin. At the moment, he doesn't realize he's working for Carmine Falcone. And Gordon realizes that Batman has to escape. He has to get out of this room and make a run for it because, Gordon is also fully aware of the fact that corruption is everywhere and that they're going to try and stop Batman, who is one of the few people that can have any hope of bringing down the Riddler and, of course, these criminal elements that are controlling the city of Gotham. So Gordon tells Batman to take his key and then hit him, or to make it look like that Batman, hit Gordon without Gordon being involved openly with Batman's escape. So Batman hits Gordon harder than Gordon likes, and then Batman runs off all the way up to the top of the building while being shot at. And unlike the Dark Knight Batman, played by Christian Bale. By the way, Christian Bale is still my favorite Bruce Wayne Batman. I think he was really good at both roles. You have, his cape, which could magically become a glider. With the Batman being more grounded than even the Dark Knight, he doesn't have that luxury with his cape. So Robert Pattinson's Batman has a built-in wingsuit. So that's how he's able to leap off the top of the GCPD and glide away from their grasp, is with a wingsuit. Probably the only funny, there may be a few funny scenes here, not many, but one of the funny scenes is him gliding away, and then he also has a parachute, and the parachute hits a bridge, and he ends up smacking up against the bridge and then hitting a train, and then hitting the ground, and I thought that was a funny scene. So I do like the fact that this Batman's a lot more grounded. He does use technology like the contact lenses, and he even gives Selina Kyle these contact lenses to help her go inside, further deeper inside the criminal element, because she also works at the Iceberg Lounge, but she is aware of what goes on below the Iceberg Lounge at 44 Below. And she has a history with the Penguin as well as Carmine Falcone. Plot twist, it turns out that she is the daughter of Carmine Falcone. And even though I guess Carmine Falcone doesn't realize she's his daughter because he was hooking up with her mom and her mom got pregnant and had her. And then eventually Carmine Falcone, it's found out that he kills Selina Kyle's mom for reasons. He also kills Selina Kyle's friend who was hooking up with the mayor. And she had information about what was going on. And that information gets put on the phone, as she's being interrogated by Carmine Falcone. And unfortunately, she gets strangled. But she managed to send a phone call without Carmine Falcone realizing it to Selina's phone. And so Selina has that evidence. And so now Selina's out for revenge against Carmine Falcone for two reasons. She feels like at first that Carmine Falcone abandoned her and never treated her like the daughter she deserved to be, and B, killing her friend. There are a few coincidences that she happens to be Carmine Falcone's bastard daughter, I guess, and the friend of the mistress of the mayor. But overall, once again, I did love Zoe's performance as the Catwoman, or Selina Kyle. I just think that you don't have to connect everybody to everybody in movies and TV shows, and that's a problem that's been around for a while now. She didn't have to be the daughter of Carmine Falcone, but it is what it is. That's just how it is in this universe. It's weird because it feels like up to a certain point that Carmine Falcone is aware of the fact that she's his daughter, because he's really, really nice to Selina. On multiple occasions, he goes out of his way to be very nice to Selina. And it gives you the impression that Carmine Falcone is fully aware of the fact that she's his daughter, but he never acknowledges it. But he chooses to actually be nice to her and go out of the way whenever she needs to talk to him, unlike other people throughout the Iceberg Lounge and 44 Below. In fact, he calls away all of his henchmen. He's like, get the fuck out of here. I want to talk to Selina, because she's obviously upset about something. But whenever there's a reveal near the end of the movie that she is his daughter, it's as if he didn't realize that. So it feels like a contradiction in this scene, because I would have preferred it if Carmine Falcone actually acknowledged the fact, like, yeah, I knew you were my daughter all along. Why do you think I never tried to get in your pants? But of course, he's also now trying to kill Selena because Selena's trying to kill him. They're obviously trying to kill each other. Selena's trying to kill Carmine Falcone for killing her friend, and Carmine Falcone's killing her because she's betrayed him and she's trying to kill him. And when he's about to kill Selena because he has her down, he's about to strangle her, even though she's proven in the past to be a very competent fighter. You think against this older crime boss, she'd be able to, easily defeat him. But, he's actually managed to get the one up on her, and he's about to kill her, and he reveals that he also killed her mom. So I guess Selena had no idea who killed her mom, but it turns out to be Carmine Falcone. Fortunately, Batman shows up and rescues her at the last moment. And I realize I'm jumping around throughout the movie here and there. By the way, John Turturro did a fantastic job as Carmine Falcone. I didn't mention that in the non-spoiler section because it's kind of a big spoiler that Carmine Falcone is an important character in the Batman movie that's not really revealed in the trailers. But basically, Carmine Falcone is one of the main guys in the movie. He's, I guess you could say, along with the Riddler, they're side by side as the top two villains in the movie, with the Penguin being more or less a secondary villain, because at first they think that he's the rat, that he's the one behind everything. The Penguin turns out to not be the rat, are the puppet master behind all this corruption going on in Gotham. It's obviously Carmine Falcone, who betrayed his boss and who is running the GCPD, who is running the mayor from behind the scenes through corruption and bribes and extortion and blackmail. And when it's outed that Thomas Wayne had something to do with this conspiracy and corruption, because at the time before Thomas Wayne was murdered, he also was running for mayor like 20 years ago. And he had this journalist killed by Carmine Falcone because he was saying negative things about Thomas and Martha. Specifically Martha Wayne, because she's had some mental issues in the past and she had been confined to Arkham once or twice. By the way, the Riddler makes his case that the top two families in Gotham are the Wayne family and the Arkham family. So they're like at the top of the elites, the best of the best, the creme de la creme, even though there's probably other rich families as well throughout Gotham City. But at the very top, it's always been the Waynes and the Arkhams. From Carmine Falcone's point of view, whenever Bruce confronts him about what happened to his father and the corruption of Thomas Wayne, Carmine Falcone says that, yeah, him and his father were best buddies. And his father obviously saved his life whenever he was shot. And Thomas came to Carmine Falcone to deal with this reporter because he was going to expose secrets about Martha. And, Carmine Falcone makes it seem like that, I was best friends with Thomas, but somebody else had your parents killed. And he alluded to the possibility of his former boss being the one responsible. So it led Bruce to believe that Carmine Falcone was not responsible for his parents' death and was actually friends with Thomas, which meant that Thomas was not as good of a father or good of a person as Thomas thought he was. But earlier in the movie, the Riddler targeted Bruce Wayne, sins of the father, and nearly killed Bruce if it wasn't for the fact that Alfred was the one who intercepted the package that was meant for Bruce. But it blew up this library or study, and fortunately Alfred managed to throw it across the room before it blew up. And it did hurt him. It did seriously injure him. He had to go to the hospital. And eventually when Alfred woke up, Bruce confronted him about his father's history, talking about how Alfred lied to Bruce. And then Alfred had to basically set Bruce straight. Like, look, your father wasn't perfect, but he was still a good man. And everything Falcone told you was basically a lie. This is what really happened. Your father absolutely loved your mother. He would have done anything for your mother. And all he did was he told Carmine Falcone to go, threaten the guy, not to kill the reporter, but to go threaten him, or at least bribe him into shutting the hell up. But Carmine Falcone decided to kill the guy. And when Thomas confronted Carmine Falcone about it and threatened to drop out of the race, Carmine Falcone might have been the one that had Thomas or Martha killed. And at first, whenever Alfred said that, I was kind of like, oh, come on, don't make it Carmine Falcone that's responsible for Thomas and Martha's death because, it's supposed to be Joe Chill. But then Alfred also makes a point, like, I honestly don't know. It could have been Carmine Falcone, or it could have been just some random person that was desperate, a robbery gone wrong. And that's basically what it is in, the canon of The Dark Knight and Batman, is the fact that there was no conspiracy revolved around the death of Martha and Thomas, even though it has been done a few times before. I prefer the story that they were just in the wrong place at the wrong time, leaving Zorro or the Grey Ghost or whatever movie or opera performance they were watching or play, and they were just in the wrong place at the wrong time in Crime Alley. And, some random, desperate criminal came up to him and robbed him. It went wrong, and unfortunately, Thomas and Martha were killed in the process. I did like the fact that Alfred, showed Bruce that Thomas wasn't as bad as Carmine Falcone was trying to make him out to be, because Carmine Falcone was basically agreeing with what Riddler was saying. Like, yeah, your father was bad. He was awful. He was one of us. He and I had ambitions of taking over the city. But fast forward, once Batman saves Selina from Carmine Falcone, he takes Carmine Falcone out from 44 Below all the way up to the Iceberg Lounge above it, and then out into the street to be exposed to the light. And just so happens, Carmine Falcone gets gunned down by the Riddler, who has his apartment overlooking the front entrance of the Iceberg Lounge. So everything the Riddler has been doing has been from that apartment, just waiting for his moment to have Carmine Falcone exposed, and then he guns him down. And then, of course, the Riddler gets found at a cafe. He gets arrested. And then, of course, he wants to talk to the Batman at Arkham Asylum. So at this point, several people are now dead. The mayor's dead. The commissioner's dead. The DA's dead. Carmine Falcone is dead, along with a few others that are dead. And Alfred nearly died because the Riddler was targeting Bruce Wayne as well because of, quote-unquote, the sins of the father. And Batman is under the assumption that the Riddler knows that Bruce Wayne is Batman. And whenever he first goes to Arkham Asylum to confront the Riddler, it seems like the Riddler knows that Bruce is Batman, because he keeps saying, Bruce Wayne, Bruce Wayne. But as the conversation progresses, it becomes pretty apparent that he's just talking trash about Bruce Wayne. About this kid, this billionaire kid who lost his parents, and like, oh, that's not a billionaire because he got to live in a tower. He has money. He has a butler. He has a maid. I'm a real orphan because Riddler, he lived in an orphanage, and the orphanage got shut down after the death of Thomas Wayne, and the renewal fund got taken over by Falcone and other elements within the city of Gotham, like the mayor, the commissioner, the DA, and various other criminal elements basically took control of the renewal money that was supposed to go towards rebuilding Gotham, and it was also going to help out the orphanage, which was part of the Wayne estate. So the Riddler goes on and on about what he was doing to, quote-unquote, save Gotham, because he was inspired by Batman over the past 2 years. So Batman has had an effect. He has inspired people, but unfortunately, his actions have inspired someone like the Riddler to take action as well, even though obviously Batman does not kill. He does believe in justice, even though he talks about vengeance. At the end of the day, Batman is all about bringing people to justice, not killing them. Riddler, on the other hand, believes that the only way to end the corruption is basically through a massive purge of killing as many people involved in the conspiracy as possible, or as many people as he thinks are involved in the conspiracy. But then it comes to a point where he says, we almost got Bruce Wayne. Almost. The only one that survived was Bruce. And then that made Batman realize at that moment, because you can see it in his eyes, right? And I love how they do this in some movies where, like, Batman just looks at the Riddler. Because, for most of this conversation, Batman's kind of looking away, just listening to the Riddler ranting, on the other side of the glass. And then the moment he realizes that the Riddler has no idea that Bruce Wayne is Batman. Not once in his mind would he even conceive of the idea or notion that the son of Thomas and Martha Wayne is the very one who's the guy that becomes Batman, who dons the cape and cowl for 2 years trying to save Gotham, who inspires Riddler and his followers to do their heinous acts. And so Batman confronts Riddler. He says, we're nothing alike. You're insane. You're crazy. You're a murderer. And I'm actually out for justice and stuff. And so the Riddler gets upset because to this point, he had this weird twisted vision of him and Batman being side by side, being BFFs, I suppose. And then the Riddler's like, haha, well, I thought that we'd be standing here together as the city is destroyed. Ha ha ha. And then the Batman realizes that the Riddler's plot is not complete. It's not done yet. And he's like, what did you do? And so the Riddler is basically, I guess, getting a last laugh at Batman because there's something else the Riddler had planned that has yet to unfold. And then, of course, Batman goes back to Riddler's apartment and he basically uncovers this map of Gotham that's been drawn out by the Riddler, where there's these vans like they're parked by the flood wall because, you know, Gotham is surrounded by water and river. I guess it's like New Orleans, I suppose. And this happens to be on election night because even though the mayor's dead, the opponent that was going up against the mayor, she's been elected to mayor because obviously her main opponent is dead. So she's the new mayor, and the Riddler's opinion is it doesn't matter if she's the new mayor. She's just going to become corrupt. She's going to become no better than the previous mayor and anyone else that takes over as a new commissioner, new DA. It doesn't matter. They're going to become just as corrupt, just as bad, and it's just going to happen over and over again. And so him and his followers, by the way, he has like 500 followers or several hundred followers that are Riddler goons or Riddler henchmen or Riddlers. And they're going to show up at this, I guess this Coliseum, this sporting venue, right? And this is where the whole to-do is going to happen at Gotham, the mayor's victory night, where she's going to give a speech. There's going to be people there, and people are celebrating. But then the vans go off, they explode across the city, just as Batman is at Riddler's apartment, realizing what the Riddler was up to. It all just happens to happen, and of course, downtown Gotham gets flooded. And it forces people to run to the center of Gotham and run inside the arena. We'll just call it the Gotham Arena. I don't know what the exact name is, where the victory party is happening in order to get to safety from the flood. But, you know, on the scaffolding above everything else, the bleachers and everything, you have Riddler's henchmen that have showed up. Somehow they managed to get into the building, and for some reason there's no guards, no cops, no security personnel, you know, up in the scaffolding either. It's been left unguarded, so that Riddler's henchmen, who are all wearing Riddler masks, they show up with rifles and shotguns, and of course they start opening fire on everybody below them, including the mayor. They try to kill the mayor, but fortunately she's saved by Gordon. Batman shows up and a fight breaks out at the top of the arena with him and the Riddlers. Then one of the henchmen manages to hit Batman, and Batman's basically hanging on for dear life. This one henchman has a double-barrel shotgun, right? And he takes forever to unload the double-barrel shotgun and load the shotgun. Bear in mind, it's 2 shotgun rounds that he has to put into this double-barrel shotgun. And he takes a sweet-ass time unloading it and reloading it. And why didn't he bring like a pump-action shotgun or a semi-auto shotgun? He brings a double-barrel shotgun to this fight, even though a shotgun isn't going to be very effective all the way up there in the scaffolding, okay? Like rifles, okay, yeah, rifles will be very effective, whether it's a sniper rifle or like a semi-auto rifle or an assault rifle. But a shotgun's not going to be as effective from up there, you know, at a distance between you and the ground. So the guy's about to blow away Batman. He's about to blow Batman's head off with this double-barrel shotgun that he takes forever to load. And then, of course, Selina Kyle shows up to help Batman out. She saves the day. Well, she saves him. But then she gets attacked by the same guy, I think. And Batman's basically almost down for the count, right? He's laying on the ground because he's had to fight all these Riddlers. He's been banged up pretty bad. And then he takes basically an adrenaline shot. Some people were saying it was Venom that he was taking. I don't think it was Venom. I think it was just an adrenaline shot that he happened to have on him for situations like this where he needed that little extra boost to get back into the fight. And so he gets up and then he gets the Riddler gang member henchman off of Selina, and he starts beating the crap out of this one dude. And then Gordon shows up and tells Batman to stop. So Gordon and some of the cops manage to finally get up to the top of the arena and arrest and stop the rest of the Riddlers, even though there's like flooding, you know, at the bottom of the arena now, and people are like trapped because there's been debris falling, and there's an electric line like threatening people as well. And so like they take off the mask of one of the Riddler henchmen, and they ask him, "Who are you?" And the Riddler henchman basically says, "I am vengeance." And that has like a negative effect on Batman because he realizes that, it wasn't just the Riddler that was inspired by him. It was also all of the Riddler's followers that were inspired by him, but they took it the wrong way. But he doesn't have enough time to really process this because there's like this huge electric line that's in the water that's threatening the lives of a lot of people down at the bottom of the arena. So Batman uses his grapple hook. By the way, he does have a grapple hook, and he also has an awesome Batmobile, and he has a Bat motorcycle as well, just a regular motorcycle, but it works. And so he grapple hooks across the arena, and then he uses his bat symbol, which is basically a big giant knife, to cut the electric line, and then he falls into the water. Fortunately, he's okay. He's underwater for only like a second or two. They don't make it seem like he fell into the water and then disappeared, never to be seen again. He actually comes out of the water. He pulls out a flare, and he basically is helping people out of the debris, including, I think, the mayor who was shot. And he helps the little boy of the mayor because, the little boy, he can't help the fact that his father was corrupt. So there is a sympathy that Batman has towards this little boy, even at the beginning of the movie, because as he's leaving the mayor's mansion, he sees the little boy, sitting in his room. Batman can see, I guess, a younger Bruce Wayne in this boy and realize that this kid's going through exactly what he went through after his mom and dad were killed. And during the church scene with the DA, Bruce actually saves the little boy. He grabs the little boy and gets him out of the way. So this is like the third time that Batman has encountered this little boy, and he's rescued the boy, and he's leading everybody out of the arena with the flare. The National Guard show up. They declare martial law over Gotham. So there's like this huge rescue operation occurring, and Batman's talking about how he has to become more than just vengeance. So you see Batman preparing to go down, I guess, a new path. He's not going to be about vengeance anymore. He's going to be about, I suppose, justice. So 2 years in, he realizes that vengeance isn't the answer. It's about justice. It's about bringing people to justice. It's about protecting the people of Gotham. It's about saving Gotham. Even though that's basically been his mission for the past 2 years now, he's no longer going to make it about vengeance. Selina Kyle and Batman part ways at the Gotham Cemetery. It's interesting because I think Selina was at Martha and Thomas Wayne's crypt. I think that was Martha Wayne's crypt that she was at with one of her cats, and she has these cat carriers on her motorcycle, and I guess she's going to head up north to start like robbing people and being a cat burglar, cat woman thief up in Bloodhaven. So that's where she's heading. So they part ways symbolically. But for some reason, she happened to be at Martha Wayne's crypt, and I guess Thomas Wayne's right beside her. So does that mean that Selina's aware of the fact that Bruce is Batman? Because they seem to have some sort of romantic connection between Selina and Batman. So does she know that he's Batman? Maybe, maybe not. But then there was one additional scene I think that wasn't really necessary after the Riddler was defeated. They went back to Arkham, and Riddler was obviously in his cell, upset. But then another person started talking to him that was in another cell, who was acting very much like, I would dare say, the Joker. And I found out later after watching the movie, according to Matt Reeves, there's no intention to ever bring the Joker into future Batman movies. Well, for this franchise. So I didn't really see the point in them introducing somebody that may or may not be the Joker as a new friend for the Riddler while they're both in Arkham together. I think it would have been better just to not even have that scene at all in the movie, especially since the movie was like 3 hours long. I'm totally all right with other Batman villains being the focus of the future movies and Joker never getting the spotlight because he's gotten it plenty of times in the Tim Burton movie as well as The Dark Knight and of course through the animated series as well as animated movies and video games like in Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, and of course in this game Arkham Knight. Spoilers. In other words, I have no problem with them giving Joker a rest, especially since you have Joaquin's Joker movie did so well and there's talk of a sequel to that movie which has no connection to this Batman universe. In my opinion, it's totally fine if we never see the Crown Prince of Crime in future installments of this particular Batman franchise. There's rumors that we may see the Court of Owls, which would be really cool. You could have Two-Face, you could have obviously Penguin has survived and he's become I guess the new crime boss after Falcone's been killed, so you're going to see more to do with Penguin in future Batman movies. He may become more powerful, more threatening now. It wouldn't surprise me if we get Harvey Dent introduced as the new DA for Gotham. There's also the possibility of Hush being introduced as a villain in a future Batman movie, because the reporter that was killed, that was trying to expose Thomas and Martha, was an Elliot. So maybe he's the father of Thomas Elliot, who becomes Hush somewhere down the road. So you could have the Court of Owls, you could have Two-Face, you could have Hush as future villains and Penguin. And there's plenty of other awesome, lesser-known Batman villains that make up his rogue gallery that definitely deserve the spotlight in a live-action movie. So overall, I thoroughly enjoyed The Batman. I thought that it could have been trimmed down a little bit, especially the final act. It could have been whittled down considerably. But it was really good, and I look forward to seeing what the foundation of this movie creates going forward with hopefully, I guess, 2 additional sequels to make a trilogy out of this. And for the most part, I'm pretty happy with everybody's performances. I thought Robert Pattinson was great as Batman. I think that Bruce Wayne needs a little bit more work, so maybe they'll do that in the sequels. Zoe was awesome as Selena Kyle. Jeffrey Wright was really good as Gordon, so I think eventually we're going to see him as the Commissioner, maybe in the next movie. Paul Dano was awesome as the Riddler. Colin Farrell as Penguin. I look forward to seeing more Penguin action in future films. And, of course, Andy Serkis as Alfred. And I hope we get more time with his Alfred and Bruce going forward as well. So there you go. That's my thoughts, my views, my opinions, my review of The Batman, currently in theaters, doing very, very well financially. And I think that it does merit future Batman movies down the road. But I hope that even if Matt Reeves doesn't direct the next 2 movies, that he's at least involved in the show running process as a head writer and executive producer, because I would like for this vision to remain the same and not deviate. Like, for example, with the first 2 Tim Burton Batman movies, they go rather well together, Batman and Batman Returns. But then once Schumacher takes over with Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, yeah, that franchise kind of sort of went off the rails. Say what you will about The Dark Knight Rises, it's definitely not in my top 5, obviously. But I think that it was at least a vision that is shared between itself as well as Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, and is a fitting conclusion to the Dark Knight trilogy. So hopefully Matt Reeves will at the very least remain as executive producer, I guess a franchise runner, the head writer. And as long as the executives at Warner Brothers stay out of the kitchen, the better off this new Batman franchise will be. Your thoughts, your views, and opinions regarding The Batman, and how do you rank The Batman compared to some of the other live-action Batman films? As always, welcome below in the comments section.